In your politics on this Thursday, it means it's time for Caroline Heldman, professor of critical theory and social justice at Occidental College. She is here to break down the week's political headlines, and as always, there are many. Good morning, Caroline.
Good morning, Giselle. Great to see you.
Always great to see you. Let's start with Ukraine. It is hard to know what to believe. Peace talks are supposedly promising, so says Russia, with they saying they're retreating from the capital, but missile strikes continue to devastate that country. What's at play here? Do you see any real movement toward an end of this crisis, or just more lies and deceit?
Well, probably more lies and deceit, as we've come to expect from Putin, especially since the Biden administration is saying that the troops that are leaving Kiev are actually just repositioning, and they're headed to the eastern part of the country in Ukraine. So, Biden is saying, I'm going to believe actions, not words. And I think that's wise advice for all of us when it comes to Putin.
And I get the idea we need to de-escalate this crisis, especially with the nuclear threat there. But the idea for lay people like me of negotiations, peace talks with an aggressor that's leveling a nation and a people, women and children, it just seems so hard to fathom what can come out of, any kind of peace talks. Tell me what you see here. Is this a legitimate conversation taking place?
Well, I think it is a legitimate conversation because Putin has essentially not achieved his goal after 6 weeks. And so for precisely the reasons that you identify, the murder, the 3 million people displaced, the numerous accounts of rape coming out of Ukraine, the trauma that this country and its people will experience for generations to come, I think that's precisely the reason why these negotiations may actually work, because people are going to give Putin grace in order to end the suffering.
Okay, I have to ask you about former President Donald Trump facing a litany of legal problems, as you know, only getting worse. A federal judge ruling he most likely committed a criminal offense trying to stage a coup and overturn a free and fair election. This is serious stuff. But what does he do? He asks Putin to do him a favor and reveal dirt on Hunter Biden. What's at play here?
Well, I think what's at play here is Donald Trump knows that the vice grip is getting closer, and these are serious allegations. As you know, this is a federal judge who's looked at this, granted in a civil case, not a criminal case, so no direct impact, but also the January 6th committee has reached the same conclusion. So Donald Trump is possibly getting quite concerned about how close they are getting to him when it comes to the violent insurrection of January 6th.
And just really quickly, how does the GOP respond?
I don't think the GOP responds in any way that would make sense to me. I think 2/3 of Republicans, and this sounds hyper-partisan, but I'm looking at data here, 2/3 of Republicans believe the big lie. So Donald Trump is pretty Teflon. He said he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, and after 6 years of watching him, I believe it. I think the GOP is unshakably behind him at this point.
I have to ask you about that gap, not that it's going to make a difference, but in the White House phone logs on January 6th, the committee, as you know, is coming forth and saying what happened. I mean, there was also, the destruction of presidential documents. He's facing potential, legal matters on that. What happens now is being compared to Watergate or worse.
Rightfully so. We are living through history. At some point in time, we will know why it is missing. We will know who made it disappear. But right now, we all know what is happening here. This is a cover-up. The question is, what are they covering up? And when will we know that?
There's a lot of pressure on Merrick Garland to do something. You have said that you don't think that we'd ever prosecute a former president. Do you still hold that stance? And what do you think the DOJ is going to do? Why do you think Merrick Garland's not acting more quickly?
Well, Giselle, no one wants accountability for a violent insurrectionist more than I do. We all watched what happened that day. I just think it's a much harder pull than a lot of folks imagine. I think Merrick Garland is considering a lot of things. The first is everything we know so far has come out in civil trials, but criminal charges actually have a much higher standard of evidence. Also, I'm sure Merrick Garland is reluctant to go after a former administration, using a sitting administration for fear that that might become the precedent. But he's also probably looking at polls that find that 1 in 3 Republicans think that violence might be necessary to save our country. So he's concerned about social unrest. He's concerned about what precedent this might set. I think it sets a terrible precedent to not hold Donald Trump accountable if he was indeed involved in the violent insurrection, which it appears that he is. But I also know that there are more factors at play here.
The wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas pressuring then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows in emails reviewed by the January 6th committee just seems so egregious. Should this lead to Clarence Thomas's recusal on all matters related to January 6th, or should he be impeached?
Well, there should, and there's what he will do. He should absolutely recuse himself. He already looks a little dirty with some of the decisions that he's made about withholding documents from the January 6th committee. But will he? Probably not. Republicans are coming around him in Congress and saying that he shouldn't recuse himself. The ethics for the Supreme Court are sorely lacking. We simply don't have good systems in place to hold them accountable. And it's clear that Clarence Thomas has a conflict of interest here. He's not likely to recuse himself, though.
Well, Caroline, I can tell you this every Thursday. There's never a dull moment. Thank you so much again for lending us your vital voice on these matters.
Thank you, Giselle.
Great. Have a good Easter. We'll see you soon. All right. We'll be right back, everyone. This is your morning on Spectrum News 1.